Bro,
How you doing, man?
good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. How's things been going your way this week?
Man, it's going good, man. With the kids, soccer going. So kind of staying in that zone and enjoying it. Had Tony 17. So it's like getting that last year in. So it's been
Yeah,
every week. I'm kind of resetting to make sure I get it all in. What
yeah,
about you?
man.
What about yourself?
Man, it's been a good week, man. Same routine, just working, keeping the balance with taking care of myself, just chilling. Been paying attention to the election stuff. It's been intense, man. Just seeing like everybody kind of flustered about it, and man, yesterday I had somebody text me about it. I ain't too like into politics. I've been paying attention enough, but man, somebody texted me yesterday just trying to bring me into their foolishness, complaining about Trump. And I'm just like, man, how your family doing? You good? Like, man, leave that negative energy, away. But other than that, man, it's been a good week, but an intense one for sure.
Yeah, I was just looking at a thing. I opened my Instagram and I seen a post and somebody was showing the rapper, Plies, like he did this whole skit, I'm guessing about Kamala about to put the belt to Trump before the election results or whatever. I think he did it. And then people in the comments like, man, I know he's sick. I know he cried all night, or I know he was stressing all night because Trump won. I
Yeah.
still haven't gotten time to really sit down with it. I did a video talking about it because the way I look at it is like yourself. I don't get too caught up in it, but I don't understand. And what do you think the difference is? Because you said you don't get too caught up in it. I don't get too caught up in it. But then I know some people get really caught up in it. What do you think the difference is in those two people? The person who don't really get caught up in it too much and the person who really like they ready to draw a line and go to war with you if you voting for the other person.
Man, I think it boils down to emotional intelligence. Some people are aware of their own emotions and aware of the emotions of others, and some are unconscious. And I think people that get overly stimulated by it, they're watching the news 24/7, constantly posting about it on Facebook and Instagram. And you can just tell they're just enraged or just so like on one side versus the other, not realizing that it's all the same thing. But I think it's emotional intelligence, man. I think it shows both within the election today, but then also the state of just people and relationships in general. I think a lot of people have a low level of emotional intelligence, and not realizing that the media manipulates and uses that, to their advantage. And so I've just been seeing people get caught up in that, bro. But I think that's ultimately, what it is. We talked a little bit last week about masculinity and emotional intelligence, but I kind of compare it to the same thing where we're talking about too much of one side, too much of the masculine and no feminine, or too much of the feminine and no masculine. I think it's having an equilibrium within yourself and within your environment. But I just think today, man, just I think technology has caused us to be so one-sided on so many things, and so our emotional intelligence is going down, because emotional intelligence is, the definition of it is being aware of your own emotions and being able to manage it, and also being able to be aware of the emotions of other people. If you're so one-sided and so gung-ho for what you believe is right, and you can't hear out somebody else's perspective, that shows that you lack emotional intelligence. So just as I sit back and I observe and read everything, that's the kind of conclusion that I come to on it. Just like, man, you don't have any awareness. You're so focused on you, and rightfully so, because if you're constantly on your phone or social media, you're in this bubble, and it's always reverberating what you want to hear. So that's my kind of 2 cents on it.
I see. I was just on a meeting with a guy and he told me that on his Facebook he has a like this add-on that blocks people's feeds. Like he doesn't see anybody feed. When he opens his Facebook, it's just for him to post. And he said he has a lot of he's in like MAGA country, the MAGA make America great again.
Yeah.
He lives in a lot of MAGA country and he said he's not that. And so it was a white guy. And so he said he has it blocked to where he doesn't see everybody's feed with all of the hate and stuff. And so where he doesn't look down on people or look at people differently because
Mm,
of all of them posts. And I was like, that's
yeah.
interesting that he created that type of situation so he can avoid that. And I kind of see like the lack of emotional intelligence because me, I'm a clown in my own way. Like when I'm doing these videos, you kind of gotta be lighthearted and comical to a sense because you're talking for an hour.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll make fun of Trump, I'll make fun of Kamala, or Donald. Like, and people get sick, like how I just said Trump and I said Kamala, there was people got mad about that. But they
Because you
go
didn't say
by
the full name.
because I said Trump instead of saying Trump and Harris, I said Trump and Kamala because everybody call her Kamala. Like I don't hear
Uh,
Harris all the time, but people saw that as a slight that we call her Kamala, but call him Trump versus calling him Donald.
yeah.
And it's just like he was already a brand. Trump Towers, Trump this, Trump that. It's not like we respecting him by saying Trump, like, oh, Mr. Trump.
Right.
And it's like people just get very in their feelings. And then when I said something about Trump, when he was talking about if you famous, you just could grab them by the pee and they don't even care, or you just could grab them and kiss them. So I said something about that. And it was I think she was a black woman or Hispanic woman in my comments and was like, you know what, Tony, I'm tired of this disrespect for Trump. And I'm like, man, like, this your daddy? Like, what has this man done for you?
Right. Like they
I'm
know
like,
him personally.
I'm just speaking. But I see that like I haven't watched the news today, but I'm gonna be watching today, like tonight, to see like if there was any type of riots or any type of
Yeah.
fights in the streets or any looting or any burning couches or anything about the results. Which I
Yeah.
feel like if it was the other way around, I feel like if Harris won, I feel like Trump got some people that it would have been real ugly, you know.
Yeah. Borderline
But
civil war.
yeah, but I don't know if she has that type of fanfare or people that's gonna, ride for her like that. But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, man. I was at the barbershop yesterday and I was telling my barber, I was like, man, I booked my appointment early in the day because I didn't want to be out late at night. Cause same thing, So you heard little rumors about, oh, they're gonna board up downtown, they're gonna board up this side of town just in case people start rioting and looting. And then we just started talking about how media manipulates people, and we went back to some other scenarios recently that have taken place within the past 3 years, and we were talking about like how the media can play something over and over again, and that people just start going rioting and going crazy and burning buildings down, and just like you really just see that animalistic nature come out of people based off of just what they see. And some people are doing it because they really care about the cause and they want to like stand for change, but some people are just doing it because of their just influence, and it's monkey see monkey do. And so I was a little worried about that yesterday. I was like, man, yeah, I'm gonna be in the house early, because I don't know what's gonna go on, because again, just I see it just a rise of people who are just not emotionally aware. And what's your perspective like with everything that we talked about, and then just like the rise of the internet today, from your perspective, having met your wife, pre-Instagram and all of that, and then also coaching, just all the different things that you do, within your career. What are your thoughts on the pulse of emotional intelligence today with women as well as men? Do you see that is equal and both sides are lost, or is it that you see more women have it or assume to have it? Like what's your balance on it?
What I see is like the women are more passionate and emotional in their responses online, in their stuff online, whereas men may be more dismissive or kind of attacking in the sense of it's kind of like a woman may post like, this has deeply offended me and I am disappointed in this take and I feel this way, whereas a man may put like the crying laughing faces, you stupid. It's more so like there's a decline in emotional intelligence, but just the way that it's expressed. Like I will see women write long messages, long dissertations, or just, disagree to disagree. And then I see men more so kind of try to almost turn it into a joke or just take like a little underhanded jab with posts that they don't agree with. But my thing is the through line is that both are taking the time to comment in a negative way or a rebuttal or disgruntled way. And I think just in itself, it shows a lack of emotional intelligence to where I feel like comments should basically be out your amen and not necessarily like a soapbox.
Yeah.
And feeling the need to like be drawn in and pulled in to have to comment on every post you see or majority of the posts you see, because it takes away from your energy to live your best life, to create, to dream, to work, to grind. If you get not only consumed by the content, but then you also take it to the point to where you in the comments and then you going back and forth. And I see sometimes people will go back and forth like for days in the comments.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, like
Yeah.
what are you doing? Because you
Yeah.
will never get this time back.
Right. Right.
And the same thing, speaking to that, bro, is politics. Imagine the hours and hours people argue about politics
Yes.
that
Yep.
they gonna wish they had in their last days,
Yep.
arguing about something. And you said something earlier, and I don't know if you meant what I thought you meant when you said it's all the same thing. When you were saying like when somebody arguing about this side or that side, it is all the same thing. Did you mean like basically whoever gets in office, the country still has a way forward or an agenda, and whoever is in the office, they're just gonna be the face of whatever the agenda is at that time. Is that what you meant, or did you mean like it's no difference between the candidates?
Yeah, that's my thoughts on it. That at the end of the day, a lot of these people, whether they're on the left side or the right side, and then they kids go to school together, they play golf together. It's all a game. I scratch your back, you scratch my back. It's this back and forth thing. But to the masses, we get so caught up in it, and it stirs us emotionally. Like, I'm sure some people go and actually read the policies of both candidates of what they're going to do, but most people are just going by what they see on the news. And so, therefore, your thinking is more emotional than it is logical because you're not really paying attention to who this person says they are and then the policies they want to pass. You're looking at who this person says they are and then what the media says they are, their scandals, and then the little snippet of like a clip is played over and over and over, and then people automatically assume and take that and run with it. And man, it's been interesting just like being on the internet now, what you doing this podcast. I pay attention to like somebody may hear a snippet of like something that I say, and then like they think like they know exactly, they know me, or they know what I'm talking about, or even just I remember meeting you in person. It is a difference in like knowing somebody only from the internet and seeing a glimpse of what you hear from them or say versus being in person. I remember you would always say like, man, I'm really introverted. I'm really kind of like just chill, quiet. I don't really do a whole lot of talking. And I thought you was just playing, but the first time we met, you was really like that. You was just chill, reserved. I thought you was gonna hop in the car and just like give me a whole book, talk a whole lot. So I'm just noticing that just even within my own life and patterns of like being on YouTube, like people, and nothing, I get it, but people have to understand that whenever you're watching something on a screen or just you have a glimpse of a person, that's just a piece of them. And it's a very narrow piece of them in a moment. It's not like, sometimes people just feel like they know everything about a person because they watch all your content or they see what is portrayed, on the news about this candidate, that this is how they really are. But you don't really know a person until you know them in person and see them.
Mm-hmm.
So just been something I just been paying attention to.
And you know what, too? Also, it's like a lack of emotional intelligence in this space is choosing a candidate based off of sound bites, because I don't know, or I can't think of anywhere of a website that we can go to or any text message that we receive that says Donald Trump's policies on the border, on the economy, on healthcare, on this, to where you can like read the full plan that gets text to you, just like you get text about, are you going to vote?
Right.
Vote yes on Amendment 3, vote no on this right here. And it's like, but with Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, like there was no space that was like, it was completely disseminated to the masses of their written out full policy. We basically just going off of sound bites that we hear on the internet, sounds bites we
Yeah.
hear on the news. And then when you watch the debate is not even good, because it's
Right.
like you
It's
just attacking
entertainment.
each other, right? You calling each other names, just saying little random stuff, but it's not like a full spell out my whole policy. And so people
Yeah.
just grabbing bits and pieces and saying, so really it's like, what really do we have to base our choice off of? And how much information do we really have? Like, as the average person, not this super duper politician person who studies everything inside and out, but your average everyday person, how much information do we really have to sit down and argue with people about it?
Right.
Because it was crazy to me how I made a post about my wife, and on Instagram, and the amount of comments that thought I was talking about Kamala Harris.
Recently?
Yeah, it was a post I made on Instagram. I was just in here. I'm gonna go find it. And the post was uh here it is. They're intrigued by her. She's powerful. She's mysterious. She's unwavering. She doesn't seek attention, but she can't avoid it. They've tried to stop her, but she's unstoppable. She's the strength of her people. She's a black woman. Say her name, make room. She's claiming space. And it was like this one young lady, she was in the comments. She's really big from Africa, South Africa, 6.3 million. She put the black fists and the hearts. So people, black women, they enjoyed that. But there was some comments was like, oh, how are you stamping Kamala and you a Christian? And I'm like, so I had to write in the comments like, some assume this is about the presidential candidate. That's not the case at all. I don't stamp politics. I was thinking about my wife when I wrote this. I'm praying we can right our wrongs and uplift those who the world has tried to keep at the bottom of mankind. America has always stood on the shoulders of black women and not given her due respect. There's a shift happening, and the last will be first. In every state, in every industry she's in, her respect will be claimed. And I literally was thinking about my wife, but people just assume, I guess, because Kamala was, and I don't necessarily, I consider her black, but she also biracial.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Indians can claim her as much as black people can claim her, because she half and half. So, but it was just crazy how people just associated that to Kamala Harris. And I was like, and then people was attacking me. Some of the people was, oh, you gonna regret that. Oh, you stamping somebody who finna kill babies and all of this. And I'm like, wow, this is crazy. Like, y'all getting, and it's like, even if I was, it's like, that's my opinion. Like,
Right.
why you up in arms about that?
Right. Right. You said something, bro, with assume. Most people go off their assumptions instead of coming to a logical conclusion. And then a lot of people just don't know how to keep their mouth closed. Like, it's a time and place for things, right? To have a conversation with somebody about your politics. But being able to be emotionally intelligent enough to state your piece and your perspective, but then be quiet to hear somebody else. Most people can't do that, especially, when you look at the bubbles and the separation online of, you got, the feminists over here, you got the red pill men over here, you got incels over here, you got all this separation, and everybody's talking about their perspective and not not going to listen to that person to get an understanding, but listening to respond or listening to get ammo to further your own point of view. And I think that's where people can become more intelligent and understand the world better, when you can just listen to understand. You don't have to agree, but learn to be able to hear somebody else out. And just my tip and thought on becoming more emotionally intelligent and aware is, one, reading books about what emotional intelligence is, understanding how that correlates to you, and then also sitting with yourself, meditating, doing something to where you're just one with your body, with your mind and your spirit, going for a walk, going to the spa, going and just sitting in the backyard, but doing something where you can just really pay attention to how you feel. Something that I do daily is I meditate, in the morning, 10 to 30 minutes, and before I start my day and touch my phone and before I go to bed. But I do that to ground myself and to make sure that I'm allowing the spirit to lead me and I'm feeling how I feel. And I can also articulate, hey, this is how I feel. And having learned to do that, it's caused me to be more aware of other people. Something we talked about off camera, last week, that I wasn't necessarily aware of, that I always do, but checking in on your friends and family, saying, "Man, bro, how you doing, man?" Just checking in, like, "You good?" Like, that comes from a level of looking at self and knowing how I feel and knowing the battles and struggles that I go through as a man emotionally, and the state of seeing the turmoil going in the world. So let me check on other brothers and sisters in my life and check on them, right? But just in our day-to-day life, we get so charged up, and our body starts to suppress and to hold on to more stress because we take our emotions and our anger and then we spew it out onto other people, and we don't pause to evaluate and say, okay, this is how I feel. But taking this anger and this energy and spewing it out this way, instead of taking it and just saying, let me just be calm, let me be peaceful, let me ask them their perspective to see how they feel, and maybe they might teach me something, or maybe their experience and patterns growing up, or whatever, social economic standpoint they come from, maybe we see two different things. So let me just be quiet and just hear them out. So emotional intelligence is layered, and it leads to so many important and valuable things. I think we just got to do more of an effort to look at ourselves and to gauge and know how we feel. And I think just is rare today. Something else, as I was thinking about this too, is just looking at the spirit of a man and a woman, like outside of this, because we've been talking a lot about just dating and different things today, but I've been really trying to get to the core of, like, okay, what is it that we need from one another? And it's the spirit of God that is in the feminine and the spirit of God that is in the masculine, not so being so caught up on the external things, but that's ultimately, like, if our eyes were closed, like the show Love is Blind, like, what is it that we feel and we get from someone? And I think it's the spirit. And but what I've realized is that when we do things outside of the alignment that God has for us, and specifically like with having sex outside of marriage, how that messes with our emotional intelligence. The more, as a man, the more that I sleep with multiple women and I'm doing things outside of what God has ordained, I'm taking on this spirit of the different women that I'm laying down with, and so that's messing up my divine spirit from God. And the same thing with women. So if a woman's constantly laying down with a bunch of different men, that feminine essence, that love, that power that God has given the woman is now being coated with a lot of masculine energy and becoming very toxic. And so just, as I'm getting to the base of everything, as I'm looking at these problems and issues, like, I'm realizing that, not realizing, but just knowing that everything is spiritual. I think that's what we have to remind ourselves of, is that we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, but we do also have emotions and other gifts that allow us to experience God in this realm. And so I think that's the basis that we have to get back to, but understand all of these things and uncover, the hurt and the pain that we have voluntarily put ourselves into, to get back to the core of who we're supposed to be, so we can clearly see and love one another in the right way.
And that's I was in when I was in college, we had this class I was taking. I can't even remember the name of it, but the teacher had this thing called Decalogue Dialogue, and it was like a list of rules. It probably was like 10 rules, and I think it was a religion class. And in this Decalogue dialogue, it was kind of like what you were saying in the sense of being able to, one of the rules was, you have to listen to the other person express their thoughts and their beliefs fully without cutting them off and without arguing, but you can share your full thoughts and beliefs. So essentially it's like you and I are Christian. If we brought a Muslim on, it would be us listening to him or her tell us fully about Islam and the power of it, the belief system, and then we get to tell him or them about Christianity. But we don't raise our voice, we don't cut each other off, and we are seeking to understand. Like we're listening to hear and to understand, not to refute.
Yeah.
And I was sharing my thoughts the other day about how people are getting so in a tizzy over Halloween. I don't like Halloween. I don't want to dress up. I don't like looking at spider webs and spiders and jack-o'-lanterns. But I don't get mad at Christians who put a Snow White costume or a Tony the Tiger costume on their son or Snow White on their daughter and take them to get candy. Like, it doesn't bother me as a man who loves God. Like, it doesn't bother me because I see the innocence in it. I understand that that child doesn't know what a witch is, what a warlock is. I also understand that if that's a Christian person, they covered by the blood of Jesus. Man, when I tell you how many people went off about, oh, if you celebrating, and it's like, you're not celebrating Halloween. It's like celebrating is like when you worshiping the cause or the meaning. If the cause and the meaning is to open up demonic portals, celebrating would be to be sitting there and like chanting and channeling. But I've dressed up on Halloween before and nothing bad happened in my life. Like I was not foaming out of the mouth the next day. I did not go through any, damnation and hellfire. And I truly believe it was because of where my heart was. And that I'm not thinking about the devil, I'm not worshiping. But man, when I tell you the amount of Christians that was so angry with that and going off and, oh, you must be this, you must be that. Oh, you need to listen to witches and warlocks. They will tell you if you put on a costume what you're opening up. And I'm like, okay, so you're a Christian. You're on my page, which is a Christian page, and you're telling me that I need to listen to witches and warlocks. And you think that me putting on a costume on Halloween, which I call Holyween, is opening more demonic portals than you sitting down and listening to videos by former witches and warlocks who could still be a witch or a warlock and just pretending to draw Christians into their conversation. And I'm like, so what's worse, sitting and listening and engaging to the content of a former witch or warlock, or your kid putting on a costume and going around getting candy? And I'm like, what's gonna have more power? The spoken word and the, a word could be a spell.
Yeah.
And or somebody doing something and they don't even understand and they're not even connecting it to that. It's just like how the Bible says the ignorant, those who don't know about Jesus or God, are better off than those who know and choose to do wrong. So it's like, if you don't see something in a certain way, like you don't see Halloween as devil worship, then, and you participating in devil worship, then how much power is it going to have over your life if you see it as a day to get free candy and to be funny and dress up as your favorite character? But just having the dialogue to be able to see both sides and not to be like, you know, damning someone to hell, condemning someone to hell because of their perspective. And I did not dress up on Halloween. I did not go out and get candy. My sons had soccer that night. And so it's not even something that I was doing, but yet I'm not going to lose sleep over a Christian who said, we're going to dress up and have us a good time and we're going to reclaim the day for the Lord.
Right.
I
It's
couldn't understand it.
at the end of the day, I think it's the motive and the intent of the heart, you know. And it's like people, and specifically within the Christian community, get so riled up on Halloween, but don't trace the roots of all these other holidays as if there's some holy day, you know. That a lot of these holidays are pagan, you know. But again, it goes back to lack of emotional intelligence and being aware and just knowing when to just keep your mouth shut. Like, you arguing with somebody on the internet or just people in public, is there any growth that has taken place from this? Most of the time, not. You know, you just fueled up anger within yourself, added more stress within your own body, and just now you're at more odds with whoever you're arguing with, you know. And even with church, it makes me think about like just religion. You have those people that are in church and are spiritual and trying to grow, and then you have those people that go on Sundays just because it's the social thing to do, and it's emotional, right? But after you leave out of church, you as a person are not acting on the spiritual principles that you learned that day, or even picking up the Bible for yourself to read it and to develop and have a relationship with God. It's just an emotional thing, you know. I realize like how many people are emotional and not logical in the way that they do things, and how many people are more religious than they are actually spiritual in the way that they live their lives. You know, you'll spend more time talking about opening up to witches and warlocks, but you keep opening them legs up, you know, because you're not opening the Bible up, you know. So it's just like we pick and choose because it's easier to focus on the speck in somebody else's eye than to look at our own eye, right? It gives us an emotional high to say, like, look at them, they going to hell, or they doing this or that, you know. But on my journey, because I grew up in the church, I realized that I had a very judgmental and religious spirit at a certain point. And so I've challenged myself as I've gotten older. You know, when I had my coffee shop, I had some people that would come in that were of the LGBTQ community. And I've always been the type of person, I'll have a conversation with anybody because I can learn from anybody and I seek to understand. And so there was a person that was trans that came in and was a regular of mine. And so I talked to him one day. I was just like, hey, like, I don't mean no disrespect. I just honestly, like, I just want to hear how, you know, just your perspective on this, and how you came to the conclusion that you did to say that I'm going to go through this surgery to transform my body. And doing that, sitting down with this person, not trying to project what I think or how I feel, and just hearing them, I was able to now pour in and give my perspective because I first gave them a listening ear. I think that is the best medicine that we can give a lot of people today. It's just a listening ear. That's one thing I've learned from coaching. Is that a lot of people just need a third party, somebody that does not know them to judge them, but just to hear them out, you know. And I think that is our duty as believers, is learning to just be able to listen to people and to give them love. We want to condemn people and throw the Bible at them. Allow the Bible to flow through you, and you be able to be emotionally intelligent. You be able to keep your calm. You be able to just listen and also be emotionally intelligent enough to know, is this person intelligent enough to receive what I want to give them? Is it and what tool should I use? Should I love them through affirmation? Should I love them through just listening? Should I love them through gifting? Like, understanding that everybody's not going to be able to receive your love through words. Sometimes it's got to be through actions. And that's something that I learned from you, is that we all communicate love in a different way, but being intelligent enough in those situations with people to know, let me keep my mouth shut on like my perspective right now and just let them have their 2 cents because they're not ready for it yet. Like, being
Mhm.
able to know where somebody is a babe in the spirit versus somebody that can handle meat, you know.
Mhm.
That, I think that's another part of emotional intelligence as well, you know. Just learning to gauge that and how to deal with people, and then just knowing when to be quiet. I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people, is knowing when to be quiet and keep your opinions to yourself. And as I've said before, you know, my dad always taught me growing up, the greatest sermon that you'll ever preach is the life that you live. What does the life that you live say about your belief system and your relationship with God versus your religious rhetoric, you know?
And a lot of times, what I've been trying to study is like, why are people so attached to the perceived knowledge that they have come in contact with? Like, it's almost like this spirit of arrogance or of like, hey, yoga is this right here and this right there. And it's like they literally heard it on a YouTube video.
Yeah.
And now, because they heard that, they are so enlightened and they're so holy and so holier than thou. And they just have to, and they don't even process that, like, okay, that means something to you. But deep down, it's because you don't do yoga. You never wanted to do yoga. You don't think about stretching and sweating. So now it's easier to hold on to this belief. But somebody who meditates, somebody who likes heat, somebody who likes movement, that this could mean something totally different for them. And what you're asking them is to create a Ogoya, which is yoga backwards for Christians. And we're supposed to play instrumentals from Maverick City
Kirk
Music,
Franklin.
even Kurt Franklin, while we stretching. And it's like, no, we can stretch and not worship a God, not worship somebody else God. Like they was amongst Baal, but they didn't bow to Baal. And so it's like they right there next to him talking to these people who worship in Baal, but I'm not bowing to Baal. I'm all around. And I think that was the meaning of Jesus sitting with sinners and publicans or whatever it was called, to where I feel a lot of times people try to make it like he was like, partying with them and partaking in their, orgies or whatever. But I seen it as him sitting and hearing them, him listening to, their confessions, like what they do, and then being able to impart, the word of God into them. And I did that once with a young lady who I reached out to this other young lady. My family was in Los Angeles, and I was like, hey, do you know any chefs? And she was like, yeah, I know this one person. Now, the young lady who I'm reached out to, she's a Christian. She told me about the chef, and turns out the chef was a lesbian. But it was like I had already talked to her and everything, booked her, and I didn't know that she was a lesbian. So at that point, I'm like, okay, I'm not finna fire the woman and be like, no, never mind. I didn't know you was a lesbian. And she came over to the house and she was cooking. And then her and I had a conversation. I was like, so, tell me your story. Like, where are you from? And in her telling me her story, she said, I was raised, me and my sister, my dad wanted boys. So he raised us like boys. We dressed like boys. We played basketball. We did everything that boys do. And so it's like, okay, Dad, you finally got your boys. And she was a lesbian and she dressed like a man. And but pretty, soft-spoken, very feminine, ironically, but she was like the masculine one in the relationships, and then would date very beautiful, feminine women. But when she explained that, so then it allowed me, by listening, and instead of just hitting her across the head and saying, hey, lesbianism is an abomination to God, I was like, so is it safe to say that you were raised gay versus being born gay? Like, because you were dressed like a boy and you had to adopt the mannerisms of a boy, that it started to make you see life like a boy and you were around all boys. So while they talking about, oh, this girl fine, that girl fine, she was like, you know what? You're right. She's like, I never thought about that. She's like, I never thought about how the way I was raised changed my perspective. And then I was on a show with another lesbian lady, same thing. But by me talking to her, instead of just slapping her in the head with a Bible and olive oil, she was like, I had to, she said, I present masculine because my father wasn't in the home. And I was the oldest child. So I had to protect my mom and I had to protect my siblings. So I started to get tough and go out to sell drugs and to make money and to bring money home. I had to become my father. I had to become the
Yeah.
man of the household.
Yeah.
So when I'm listening to this stuff, I'm like, wow, had I just judged and just stayed away and not sought to understand, then I wouldn't be able to have them help them have a deeper perspective or understanding of how their life shaped who they became instead of them just feeling like there was nothing, no power that they had or nothing they could do about it because they were born that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just comes from both of us seeking to understand and then them being like, wow, you know what? And that question would always trip up people when I would talk to them and in the space of work. And I'm like, that's the difference right there of being the heart, of Christ, to where you may not agree with the lifestyle, but you show enough love to respect the person and to listen to them and to hear their history and their biography so you could speak life.
Bro, that's one thing I love what you said about be the heart of Christ. That's one thing I've learned from you and seeing you work in person, doing workshops and different things is your level of emotional intelligence. As I observe and I think about again the communities today online, you got men over here, women over here, they both talking about each other without interacting with each other in a healthy way. You know, and it makes me think about like when I see like some of the red pill content, just how demeaning and derogatory like they talk about women. I'm like, man, you don't have a little sister, do you? You don't have a mother that you love and have a great relationship with. You don't have no homegirls that you platonic with that you just get to talk to and hear their perspective on. And just on my journey in my walk with Christ, I feel like I've been able to impact the lives of more people that don't believe like me by simply just being a friend. Again, just having an open ear, just like, man, tell me about your life, how you grew up. That's the thing, man, is we all got a story. Cause I've asked you sometimes about like certain people, like, that you've coached from different backgrounds. I know that you've talked about publicly, like you've coached strippers and people from former backgrounds and just seeing that, but then being up close and personal to you, I understood like, okay, like it takes you being who God has called you to be as a man so you can control yourself and have composure to show up and be the spiritual masculine to this woman who maybe didn't have that growing up. And you can have a sense of compassion. Because I think about my relationship with my little sister and then like my father's relationship with my sister, how he treated me versus how he treated her, like the compassion and the softness with her, but then being a little bit more hard and stern with me, like the balance of the masculine and the feminine. And going back to what you said is that understanding that everybody's story growing up wasn't the same. I know on here, like sometimes when I'm giving my perspective, I can seem as though like I'm very hard and rigid, and I am on myself. But when it comes to other people, I'm very compassionate and I'm very open-minded and understanding that we all are coming from somewhere, right? We don't all have the same origins in Genesis, but we all need love. We all are lacking and hurting in some shape, form, or capacity. And the only way to bridge the gap is us getting healed from the inside out and then just being who God has called us to be in our day-to-day life as we interact with both men and women, and not be so caught up to, again, the same way that we can be so caught up to our political candidates. We can be so caught up in like, I'm for alpha men and men only, and I'm for feminism and this type of woman only, and not hearing one another. But the best growth that I've been able to have in conversations, especially with women, I've come across women who are very domineering and alpha like, and very like, I had this girl tell me one time, she's like, I don't know if you can handle me because I can be very feisty. I'm 5'3", but I can have an attitude of 6'7". And I told her, I was just like, yeah, because you don't feel secure around men. So that is your defense mechanism, right? But I was like, and I told her this, I was, being a little cocky, but I was telling the truth. I was just like, but when you come around me though, the energy gonna be different. That 6'7" gonna go back to 5'3" because I'm rightfully where I'm supposed to be, and you're gonna rightfully have to go to where you are because I'm aligned spiritually with who God has called me to be. We can shift the world by less by what we say and more of who we are. becoming spiritually grounded, becoming emotionally intelligent, becoming bridled and knowing when to talk and when not to talk. All of these things are, I think, just some of the issues, or some of the solutions to the issues that I see today of men and women can't get along, is because y'all aren't grounded, y'all aren't spiritually aligned. You are whatever you've been encountering, right? If you've been encountering a bunch of toxic women and a bunch of toxic men, you are those spirits. You are not the spirit of who God has called you to be, because you've been living such an external and sensual life. A lot of us live based off of our personality and not off our soul. We think, like you said about the young lady that you spoke to, her father raised her in the personality of a boy, but God gave her the soul of a woman. And so that's the thing, is that the world is always going to place value and preconceived ideas on us, but that's why we got to get back to who has God created us to be. What does the word say? So, but yeah, man, I think this is good, man. A really good talk, but I kind of want to hear from your perspective on your week, bro. Like, what's the pulse that you've been seeing, like, from your side? Like, you deal with a lot from so many different angles, from coaching, talking to athletes, just different things. What's your pulse that you've been kind of meditating on over the past week?
Man, this honestly was good for me today, just hearing this and us touching on this, because that's really what I've been having to work on as well, just reminding myself of the emotional intelligence. So I'm gonna stay in line with that today.
Okay.
And when we have our what would we call this on the midweek? What would we call this? You use the
The pulse,
term.
man. Just do the pulse.
Yeah, like when we do this next week, I'm gonna think of, touch on some things, but I've been having to remind myself to remain emotionally intelligent, because it's a lot of times just being a public figure, people will attack your character, attack your family, attack
Mm,
your philosophies, your thoughts, your beliefs, and just making sure that I could just, block it out, even if that literally means block and delete, versus having energy withdrawn from me by responding. And then I'll respond sometimes if I can see somebody's, intent is genuine and they're trying to get clarity and understanding, then I'll respond and share a deeper perspective on it. But it's been for me being emotionally intelligent, and also that leads into like what you said about, if you're confident, if you know who you are, it kind of ties into what I've been talking about and thinking about, because I've been hearing a lot of women ask, I know we only got like 13 minutes, but I've been hearing a lot of women ask, what to do with their man who has wandering eyes. And so I've been touching on, and the same thing with guys, if we have our woman and she recognizes handsome men, and it goes back to emotional intelligence and just being confident in who you are. And me having made that shift in my life, going from worrying about my woman being attracted to other men, or thinking about other men, because I'm waiting on what they would call the karma train, which I would call reaping what you sow. I'm waiting on that to come back around from the life that I've lived. So it induces this fear in my spirit, and had me in this space as a young man dating, of being controlling and insecure and distrusting,
mm,
and then would lead me to be unloyal or whatever, because I'm waiting on the woman to be unloyal or disloyal. And I started to, as I started to mature, that maturation process took me into a space of, to where I had to adopt and embrace confidence, and being confident enough to say, if she will do this or she will do that, that's her loss. That's on her. But I'm not going to lose my peace by trying to track her and trace her and chase her and wonder who she's looking at, who she's thinking about, who she could be talking to, because it's taking too much energy from me and it's draining me. And it's also making me look insecure and weak and less of a man. And then the same thing for women. If I don't know if you've ever talked to that type of woman, to where she's very insecure and, oh, you looking at other women. Oh, what are you doing? Other women approach you. Oh, you talking to other girls, and it's kind of like, it's not really attractive. Like, why you worried about that? Like, why you not
Yeah.
worried about who you are and how you showing up and what you bring to the table, what you present?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's really, honestly, man, this emotional intelligence piece with the election, with our day-to-day interactions, with our response versus reactions to friends, family, online, and just people, tugging on us for our ear and our time. All of that just ties back into that EI. And so this was spot on for me today, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No, man, that last piece you just said was so powerful, man. About how it'll certain things, if we're not emotionally intelligent, if we haven't taken the time to look within ourselves when we're with our partner or somebody else, it'll that insecurity will flare up, right? But that's why I think it's important for us to be able to look at ourselves and to know our own insecurities, because I recognize that in dating pattern. When I was reflecting on dating patterns, I'm like, man, why do I keep running across women that are, insecure about certain things, or like wondering whether or not I'm cheating or this or that? And I had to look at myself, and it's like, oh, because I have the opposite of that insecurity within myself. And so therefore now we are emotionally bonded together, we're tugging on one another, and we're uprooting and bringing things out of one another. And it's made me again just really pause and take a break on dating as a man, to do the work and to really look at myself, because it's easy to point the finger and just be like, man, all women are insecure, all guys aren't emotionally intelligent or available, but not looking at like, okay, well, what is it within you that keeps attracting that? You're the common denominator in all of these situations, like, is you at some point in time, so everything just points back to self and looking within ourselves. Again, for me, meditating and just sitting with myself, going for walks, being in nature, having a dog. Bro, when I got Duke, and he moved in with me in like 2019, and I didn't realize how hard and overly masculine I was until I got him. And I had to care for something outside of myself, and I had to care for something that couldn't speak to me and say, hey, this is what I'm going through, this is what is wrong, I'm ready to eat, I need to go to the bathroom. It caused me to pay attention. And so having an animal, I'm not saying that y'all go out and get a dog or get an animal, but having an animal, I understand why we have emotional support dogs, or animals. Like having a dog as a man and being in my single season has made me so emotionally aware and like caring. Like, he'll just come up to me and just want to lick and play or want to be rubbed, but it does something to me too, because going back to what I said earlier about the different ways to give love and to give our emotions, I'm not a very touchy-feely person, but him coming up to me and wanting to touch, that showed me, okay, I need to work on that. Where does this come from? Why don't I like hugs, or like, a whole lot of like touching on me and being on me? So it's a lot that we can learn about ourselves if we just take time to pause and see God in our life currently. Like certain scenarios or things that keep coming our way that we think are annoying us, God is trying to elevate us to grow past this level, and to become more aware of him and to be more in tune with our emotions. But man, I think this was a phenomenal episode, man. And I'm glad we were able, to talk about this. And lastly, just my last question before we go is, I'm curious, bro, just as a single man, and also just to be able to give the perspective to other men out there that are on that journey of wanting to find their wife and be married one day. What are some of the things that you've learned from being a father, and then being a husband emotionally? Because I can only imagine what that feeling was like. I know you've shared this before about Lil T being born 2 months early. Like, what did that do to you emotionally? Like being a young man, being newly married with your wife, like going through all of these things. How did you grow through these things emotionally? How did you handle those emotions of fear, of worry, of like, man, what's gonna happen to my son, and all these different things? How do you handle it? And then what have been the blessings that you've learned from becoming more emotionally intelligent through fatherhood and husbandry?
One thing I realize, I'm 40 now, and man, I'm still learning. And I think that balance of what some genius spoke about, the lion and the lamb. And I read a quote that said, "A man's strength is his gentleness." And so finding that balance of, and this is what I found has been is the sweet spot. Being authentic and real and direct, but being stoic in that expression. So instead of yelling it, or instead of reacting with a lot of air in your chest and being loud, and instead of trying to hurt with your words and trying to tear down or just really, dig into somebody, more so just speaking the truth in love, and how powerful that is, and how your wife does not like it, but she respects it. And deep down, she wants it and she needs it to hear how you truly feel. And if she loves you and she respects you, she will honor and respect your views. And she will make adjustments because you are the head of the household. You are her covering. You are who God has put in her life. And I've noticed that. And my wife, she don't like to hear it long and drawn out. She don't want an hour conversation. She want me to tell her what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, or what I need in 5 words, 15 seconds or less. Like, she don't, if I try to draw it out, I got it. I got it. I heard you. I got it. Like, she made quick changes. Now my son, he can't shut me down. He can't tell me stop talking. And I had to get on to him last night, but I felt the growth in it, and I was talking to him. Ironically, it's like you had my phone tapped, because we were talking about emotional intelligence. And I was like, son, what's one of the things, you did well? And he was telling me, I was like, what's something you need to work on? He's like, emotional intelligence. And then I had talked to him about it. And I told him, I said, son, listen, sometimes you don't like the way I talk to you. But I said, I bully bullies. So if I see you like not being emotionally intelligent and you yelling at people or you getting down on people, I'm gonna come and I'm gonna check you and I'm gonna put you in your place. And so that you understand what that feel like, if when you putting somebody down or you making somebody feel a certain way and you don't have love for them, you're not even doing nothing for them, you haven't accomplished anything yourself. And I'm like, so you on the same level of your teammates. You shouldn't be talking to them like you're a disgruntled stepdad or something. I'm like, you should talk to them with positive reinforcement, even when you holding them accountable. And so I had to talk to him about that, about manhood, because it could start to look very toxic. Hey, get here, do this, go there, go that. And that's how he'll be on the field sometimes. And I'm like, you can't do it like that. You got to
Yeah.
change your tone. But I've had to learn that as a man, and he has seen me make that mistake. And so, man, finding that balance. And to be honest with you, bro, you 30 years old, you a single man, you already have it. You exemplify that to where you could speak the truth to power, and you may even be wise enough in a certain scenario to ask a question that draws out the answer, which is the solution to the subject's problem. And you didn't even have to say it out of your mouth. They said it out of their mouth because you asked a question that you knew would put them in the mental space that they needed to be in. And you've been doing that since I met you 5, 6, 7 years ago, however long it was. And so I say that to say that's the secret right there. It's not being afraid, but yet not feeling like you have to posture and you got to poke your chest out and you got to yell or scream or curse or belittle, but just being able to calmly and casually, in essence, if we thinking of like, them street movies, and how the tough guy, the gangster, the mob boss is just like, he just do a look, or he just points a finger, or he just does something, and then the most dangerous thing gets done based off of that head nod. Whereas the guy who's like, I'll do this to you, I'll do this, and you like, and they laugh at him. And that's one of the things that I found today is the difference between the red pill men and the red pill women is they just loud and boisterous and angry and upset, instead of saying, hey, this is how I feel about this, and this is what hurts about it, and this is what I want to be healed about it. Instead, they just become angry and start attacking. And then that turns into our relationships, and that leads to the breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man. I think phenomenal episode, and I'll end with this. You know, I love when I look at the spirit of Christ, the true masculine. Um, the story whenever they wanted to stone, I think it was a prostitute, and then he just kind of, I think they say he was writing in the dirt. If I'm saying this correctly, go read it for yourself. But he looked up at him and he said, "Okay, you know, you without sin, throw the first stone." Like how poised, and just thinking about that moment, like you said, the mob boss, like thinking about that, like, okay, look up, you without saying, you throw the first stone. Like how emotionally intelligent, but also how divinely masculine he had to be to have that restraint to be able to say and move like that. So, hey, again, I think great episode. I think it's a lot for us to sit and meditate on, to look at ourselves, to look at our spirit, and to analyze and ask, am I being the personality of my experiences, or am I being the peace and the fruits of the spirit that God has given me, and move from that perspective. So, but appreciate y'all for tuning in. Thank you for your attention span. If you made it to this hour and 49 seconds, we appreciate you. Please keep track, you know, on the YouTube channel. We have Instagram as well. It's Louder Than Words Show. And if you need to email us any specific questions, comments, or concerns, our email address is louderthanwordsmedia@gmail.com. But other than that, we'll be back Sunday with a new episode, and we appreciate y'all. Peace.
Awesome.